There was several attempts to hijack my car. I can remember people running at me with balaclavas, trying to take the car and burn it and use it as a burning barrier. And sometimes I had other OTs in the car with me.
To the northwest. Is that
okay.
when you became my boss?
Yeah, correct.
Terrible boss you were, Paraig.
Although it didn't go as far as sort of really formal psychological support service. And in retrospect, that was probably required in some cases.
Paraig, welcome to Seating Matters. I'm delighted that you're joining us again.
I'm absolutely delighted to be back here at Seating Matters now, in this lovely environment.
Right, so you were here when we were doing the Power of OT book, and we had a little bit of an interview, and we thought we might use that as a podcast, but we decided no, we would do it properly. So that's why we're back here.
Very happy.
And for a man who's retired, supposedly, you're a really busy man because you've just come straight from University of Ulster the last 3 days. Tell us about that first.
I'm delighted with this course now. There are now 2 accredited postgraduate courses that can go towards a master's in housing and disability.
Is this the first time it's been run at Ulster University?
This is the second year that we've run this particular module, but the other module has run for a few years. Suzanne Martin has shown very good leadership in this area and created the space to develop this. But now you can do like a basic postgraduate course on adaptations. It's 6 courses covering the whole range of adaptations: kitchens, ramps, bathrooms, bedrooms, wheelchair standard, and the whole range of accessible housing formats. Right. It's very intensive. It runs for 3 days. There's 6 lectures, and because it's masters, we then use OSCE techniques to assess the OTs at the end. So we look at how they measure up the service user. So everyone's evidence-based and user-centred to formulate specifications for housing adaptations. So it's right at the core of postgraduate practice. So it's been a great course, 20 students at a time, and we're delighted by the standard of the
students coming.
Oh yeah,
very good.
Commitment.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your career, but you can see very evidently that your passion for housing and passion for occupational therapy has not waned in your retirement. Would you say you're retired?
Well, I suppose after I had an acquired injury and experienced disability myself, I would have difficulty doing a 7-8 hour day at a workstation, but I can certainly do shorter blocks of work, and that works well. That I can actually focus my energy in short blocks. But my interest in policy and design and good products for disabled people, well-designed products, hasn't waned. Still fascinated,
Very good. So, having said that, can you just, for those listening or watching that don't know Paraig O'Brien, tell us a little bit, just a little introduction to where you started and what your passion has been all these years?
Okay. Well, I qualified at the University of Ulster as an OT in 1982. I was at a crossroads actually making the decision about occupational therapy because I was very keen on music. I was playing music sort of semi-professionally. I was doing A-level art. I always was fascinated by art. I'd actually applied to go to art college, and then I also applied for occupational therapy. And I did find occupational therapy a really good fusion of the 2 areas that I loved, the sort of creative arts and then the sort of science and the biology and the meeting human need. And it offered a fusion of those 2 areas of interest.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, that was a good decision.
And not one you've regretted?
No.
Definitely not.
No,
right.
I haven't. No. So I qualified in 1982. I went to work in Northwest Belfast. It was a very difficult time in Northern Ireland at that time. And there's real impacts on how you practiced OT, the real constraints,
and for those who haven't actually read the Power of OT book, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about your experience.
What it was like,
what it was like working during the conflict.
I suppose in many cases, like any conflict area, if you know where it's happening, you can often avoid it, if that localised knowledge. But when you're providing a direct community service, you didn't always have a choice. You needed to cover geographic areas that were experiencing conflict. And we used to plan our day's work by the columns of smoke arising in the horizon and having to reschedule who would we visit and when. There was several attempts to hijack my car. I can remember people running at me with balaclavas, trying to take the car and burn it and use it as a burning barrier. And sometimes I had other OTs in the car with me, taking them out on joint visits and trying to weave around burning, barriers in front of you. So I do have the occasional flashback to that.
And you got injured?
I did once, yeah. I got a wee...
A wee
I got a
bullet.
yes.
That's not a wee injury,
I
part.
was down near Davis Flats. I was just lifting batting equipment out of the back of the car and just felt this stinging sensation. It wasn't overly painful. It was like a bee sting or a wasp sting, and blood started to trickle down. And then I checked with some guys and said, "No, you've definitely been hit with a bullet there, but it probably wasn't a full caliber bullet. It was probably like a .22, one of those lighter slugs."
Yeah.
I was lucky because it was very near the carotid artery,
Of course.
or the eye. So
I couldn't minimise it.
and I
The
felt
shock.
I did feel a bit unnerved, but that passed all right. I mean, I went to my a great OT manager, Breeds Journalis, who was very supportive, and took a bit of time out of that area, but went back after a few weeks,
And you were saying, when we were chatting earlier, that at that time there wasn't really counselling for people who were traumatised, and all the nurses and people.
That's right. It's
What
a
did you
good
think?
point. That there's
Yeah.
no. Well, I suppose we were providing services for others, both physical and psychological, and yet the healthcare staff themselves didn't always have formal debriefing and specialised services. Because indeed, many staff must have experienced post-traumatic stress, particularly paramedics and others who really saw quite awful things.
Horrific injuries.
Certainly, but it was the era when structured professional supervision was coming into play, and that was a sort of medium we would use to sort of work through
Yeah.
experiences and the caseload and impact. So having, and then that wasn't long in place really, sort of structured supervision, and that was a help.
Yeah.
But I
So
think
having somebody there, your
and
manager,
you
your
could
line
talk it through.
manager.
Although it didn't go as far as sort of really formal
Proper
psychological
consult,
support
yeah.
services. And in retrospect, that was probably required in some cases. Yeah.
So that was your early days in Belfast and the conflict, and then where did your career take you after that?
Yeah, well, it was things always evolved, and I was seeing very poorly designed products very often. I was seeing clients who maybe wouldn't use a product. I said, "Well, why did you not use that?" And it's a kind of waste of money, like if somebody isn't using it. And often there was some aspect of the design of the product, that wasn't either working functionally or aesthetically very often. And I said, okay. And I can go back to my early interest in art and design. Thought I'd like to go back and do product design for disability. And I was the first OT in Northern Ireland to say, I want to get dual training here as an OT and in the design world for disability. So I went to London College of Furniture, which I could have lived in for the rest of my life. They made musical instruments there, furniture restoration, all sorts of interesting areas. But then it was the one place in the UK at that time that did product design for disabled people. And they had a wonderful model, which was highly influential for the rest of my days, where they took people from the health sciences, life sciences, physio, OT, speech and language therapist, who knew about disability and need. They took people from the technical design world, engineers, architects, product designers, and we formed design teams who would take projects. For example, get up in the morning, tie one hand behind your back, and using a dictaphone, analyse every product you have a difficulty managing with one hand.
Very good.
And then you choose one of those products and you redesign it in a team. So we were analysing the disability side, and then we're working with product designers, and we were coming together to share our skills.
Yeah.
So I learned about the design processes. We had to build prototypes and test them out. So, we're learning all those skills. And the guys from the technical world were learning about disability and all the facets and the angles and the whole psychology of disability as well. And so wonderful learning. And that absolutely shaped my career.
Yeah.
Whether it was and it completely committed me to interdisciplinary cross-sector working. I realised that no one profession has all the answers. No. But if you collectively bring it together and focus on the problems, you can do great things.
From the last time we interviewed for the book, there's two things stood out with regard to that. I asked you, did you ever think OT wasn't valued? And you said, never in that group. I wasn't looking for OT to be the value. It was like a team effort.
That's right. I
Words
think
to
that
that
is the
effect.
secret. Collaborative work. Once you start to interact with other people and work collaboratively along jointly agreed issues, they see your value and you see their value.
Yeah.
And you're cracking problems together and say, my God, yeah, look at the skills these guys are bringing and look at the skills these guys are bringing. So it wasn't like I'm going out to promote OT.
No.
It was focused on the needs of disabled people. People got it then. The skill set you were all bringing to the table.
And you also said that no matter in the years leading and any project later, you always says, bring it back to the patient.
Absolutely. If I heard professionals starting to get into little either personal agendas or professional agendas, bring it back to we're focusing on the disabled person here. Are we going to crack this one? And that did actually work very well.
Yeah.
And even better if you actually have disabled people in the room.
Yeah.
So a big part of my work, and a big part of my success,
Yeah.
and I was very fortunate because there was extra money came in for service user involvement at that time. So it allowed us, gave us the resources to bring together expert panels of disabled people. And there was normally a pan-disability panel of sight loss, locomotor problems, hearing loss. So we could hear all the facets across the spectrum of need. Yeah. And I had access to that through Disability Action, Orla McCann, and we worked very tightly together to get disabled people. Every project, we had a cohort of disabled people advising us on the whole terms of reference, the delivery and the evaluation of each section of the projects.
So that time you were in London, like that was a really a defining time for you as far as your career was concerned. It set you off looking at not just assessing the need for a product or prescribing a product, it's looking at the product and saying, like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Does it fit the need?
Yeah.
Does it look right? Does it work right?
Yeah.
And then you got an award for that.
Yeah, I got it was the mould design for the best product that year. I was looking at the whole problem of people trying to get out of an easy chair with rheumatoid arthritis. And I could see that they were using, instead of extending their wrists, they were pushing down on their knuckles, which was further causing deformity at the MCP joints. And I thought there's a real problem here. The armrests aren't well designed to help people transfer, and they're actually sustaining damage to their joints. So we set about looking at how you'd redesign armrests to help people get out of a chair without that damage, using sort of gutter type forearm supports to see how the forearm could take the loading. So it got me into biomechanics, and I was working closely with people in that field to analyse the sort of force analysis as well, and how that would feed into the product design.
Very good.
Yeah.
How long were you in London for that?
Just a year, but a wonderful year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And but then the follow through to that, Martina, was that I then moved to Oxford, and it was a natural progression. There was a research OT job going in Mary Marlborough Lodge in Oxford, and where the whole focus was publishing product design guidance. It was called Equipment for the Disabled at the time, but obviously times have changed a bit. Equipment for disabled people now. But I had 6 months to look at every product in a specified area. I had to analyse all the wheelchairs in the UK, 250, set up clinical trials, test them out personally, do an expert appraisal, then test them with service users, work with bioengineers, brought other people in, and then we wrote up the results product by product, the pros, the cons. It was like an NHS switch.
Right, okay.
And although the products changed fast, the points to consider, the core principles, what do you do if you're looking for a car conversion? What are you looking for? They withstood the test of time.
And did you write like guidelines, or was that implemented?
Oh, we published books every 6 months, and it was very tight time pressure. So I looked it out to transport all the new technologies.
And when you had the
transportation.
project finished, you wrote it up?
Oh, we did it as I went along. Each product, we took our photographs, and it was my first introduction to publications.
And what are those publications? What were they called?
They're called Equipment for the Disabled, or Equipment for Disabled People in latter years, obviously.
Have they been updated in recent years?
No,
do you know?
no. But there was a rolling programme of because the products changed and they would come around the cycle. I looked at clothing for disabled people, home management, kitchen equipment. The one that really fascinated me was outdoor transport and wheelchairs, because they were then able to feed into the environmental work later on.
Yeah.
When you know your products, then you're designing the environment around the product, and that interface was pretty critical. So the more I knew about wheelchairs, it helped me design better wheelchair standard housing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that takes us on then to housing, does it? Did you come then?
Not,
is that a follow,
not quite. I came back to Northern Ireland. I was very happy in Oxford, but there was a mid-80s. Again, it comes in cycles, but you couldn't afford a house in Oxford. It was, I was settling down with my wife Sheila. We had met in London.
Right.
And,
She was an artist? Or
An
is
artist,
an artist?
a great artist, yeah. Yeah. Her mum was a very good artist too, Donegal landscapes. And, yeah, so it was always been that love of art in the family and between families. But
So you came back to Northern Ireland?
came back to Northern Ireland partly, because, well, the main reason, if I'm being honest, was my mother was critically ill. She had lupus, and she had lupus for 10 years, and unfortunately was becoming more and more ill. And I wanted to get home to be closer to her.
Yeah.
That was really the real
main reason.
And secondary was the affordability of housing, and that was a huge thing. And I mean, Northern Ireland really had that at its advantage. You could afford a really good house, in those days.
Yeah.
And for a fraction of the money it would have cost you in England.
So is that when you came? I'm just trying to get the timeline right. Is that when you came to the Northwest? Is that when you became my boss?
Yeah, correct.
Terrible boss you were, Paraig.
Well, according to my wife, it was my decision to come to Derry, and that was 40 years ago. But,
Was it?
yeah. But there was an opportunity there, and I was motivated by the fact that I was aware that the services in the Northwest were
poor.
considerably under-resourced and weren't on a par with the rest of Northern Ireland. So part of it was a task to let's really build these services up so there's sort of equitable services across Northern Ireland.
Well, I think to this day I have to give you the credit for doing that in the Northwest and this west of the band, as we say here in Northern Ireland, because I was one of those OTs. I was there at that time, and there was only 5 or 6 of us.
At the start, there was one in the community for over 100,000 people.
I joined you in '88, I think.
Yes, well, that was the year I started. Because you must have been there pretty,
I was the first OT in Limavady community.
I remember that. Yes. But again, you maybe one OT covering 30,000 people or more. It was really quite a challenge. And again, I can remember times in the office, listening to people concerned about these meetings. I said, the longer I talk to you, the less people I can get out to see and help.
Yeah.
Please. And that's really an education in politics too. You say, look, this is, it's not a professional issue. We need political support to lever in the appropriate resources to meet people's needs. It was the first time it clicked with me. You need to mobilise political support and the government support to change these things.
Yeah. The funny, when I was talking to Kate, she said the same. She says, you never miss an opportunity to sit down with a politician or to have a cup of coffee with them to get your point across.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say that for all the issues in Northern Ireland, when it comes to disability services, normally I've found a very high level of cross-party support for disability.
Yeah.
That's always been a very positive thing.
So we had Kate here earlier, and we were chatting to her about her involvement and the great input that she had into the specialist section for housing with the Royal College. And of course, you were a big part of that. So tell me a bit about that and the impact they had and the value of that.
Absolutely. Well, Kate actually helped to inspire me, and she sort of mentored me into the specialist section along with other colleagues. So I have a great relationship with Kate, and a very professionally and personally, she's been a great support over the years. It was a huge influence on me. I was really inspired when I saw OTs, instead of working micro level just on patient care, actually getting political, moving from an individual medical model of seeing their job working with individuals into sort of working at a higher level with a social level and then at a political level. And then I thought, right, this is what we need to do. We need to get political. Well, kind of early in my career, being political was seen as a bad thing because it was sort of associated with party politics.
Of course, you were from Northern Ireland.
Possibly, and or even that it wasn't compatible with clinical work. But I realised that OTs were massively under-resourced, so we need to lever resources in for the profession, for its development, and so we could help people in an appropriate timescale and pass those skills through. And also to challenge legislation that, quite frankly, wasn't good for disabled people or older people. And there's still actually age discrimination against older people, which has never been addressed and needs to be in Northern Ireland. There was talk, that process was started, but it has stalled and needs to continue. Things like that, so both to tackle those inequalities in society and to get professional resources. There's that need. But go back to the specialist section. I worked at different levels. I worked as a Northern Ireland rep to start off with, so I represent Northern Ireland. I soon discovered that, wow, this is a powerful way to up your game. You start to see how do people in Scotland, England, Wales tackle the same issues.
Yeah.
Different systems, particularly since devolution in 1998, but new ways of tackling society's challenges. And I learned so much. Yeah, that would work for Northern Ireland. What we're doing in Northern Ireland would work for Scotland or England, and we were sharing good practice right across, getting really good ideas from each other, and actually implementing stuff right across the UK. A good example would be developed the Northern Ireland Toolkit of Adaptations.
That's right.
Now that's great. That is reckoned to be one of the best guides for adaptations and specification in these islands, and the other jurisdictions would now widely use that. But it wasn't a one-way process. We were learning from each other, and then we were lobbying government, to
Together.
improve housing standards, to get more supply of accessible housing for wheelchair users. And now increasingly it's moving from people with locomotor disabilities to moving into how do we improve standards and service of people with sight loss, big time cognitive and sensory issues. And research is coming in behind that. Stirling University for sight loss and dementia, and that's feeding into better design standards in housing. But again, there were big research gaps in the past, so we couldn't really develop the better design standards until the research was in place. So and again, we've raised quite a bit of money and have pumped it back into research and development and publications of books as well.
Oh, so the specialist section.
Did that?
raised money.
I did that through conferences and that, but it was all pumped back into research and development work and publications. Yeah, so we're very effective and we really achieved a lot, quite frankly. So I worked as Northern Ireland rep, then I worked as the UK chair for several years. So we would organise national conferences, and we'd move Northern Ireland. We had one in Derry, we had one in Belfast.
I remember going
brought it to
to
Northern
one.
Ireland for the first time, those conferences, and they loved the people, loved the
That's right. I remember you.
tour of the walls, the Gaelies and all sorts.
That's right. I remember you doing
Never
that.
mind really good talks.
Good information.
And I had moved it around, like it'd be Durham maybe one year, Aberdeen. So we moved right around the UK. So a great way to even see different parts of the UK, and great relationships formed through this, and both professional and personal relationships.
Well, we hope that the new, the way they're rebranding it and everything, and the way it's changed, that'll continue, and that we're not losing any of the work and the momentum
I
that was
really
built
do
up
hope
with
that,
the specialist section. So
some concerns, this virtual world, I see, as I argued earlier on, sometimes remote working has great advantages, but as long as you don't lose the face-to-face human touch, because that's where real network and real relationships are formed, and it strengthens the work as well when you have those good personal relationships.
Yeah. You did a lot of work around the housing and especially the disabled facilities grants and children, and that was one. When I asked you what was your biggest achievement, you put that down as at least one of your greatest achievements. Would you say?
Well, I suppose again towards the end of the 10 years, and there was a substantial. You could see real progress in developing the community services in the Northwest. But towards the end of that time, I did get a wee hankering to go back into research and education at that time, after 10 years in management. And get back into the kind of front line and answering new questions, as you did, And it was actually my staff. You may well have been one of the people that came to me and said, look, we go out to houses, and some of these adaptations aren't really working.
Yeah.
They're not addressing the needs of people with more extensive disabilities and the carers. And that set me on I said, right, I think there is an problem here. So I did a master's. I went back to the same college I did my product design years before.
You went back to
Same university. It was now called London Metropolitan University. and did a master's where I reviewed the adequacy of wheelchair design standards for the UK and Ireland. And that 1 year, I more or less proved that they weren't fit for purpose.
Because the design at that time was just around like an ambulant wheelchair user. That was one of the problems.
The main, there was 2 or 3 problems. One was that more and more severely disabled people who used to be cared for in hospitals were now coming back to live in domestic settings. All the policies were moving people from hospital back into domestic settings. So that was the first thing. More extensive disabilities being cared for at home. The second one was the manual handling operations came in 1992. And where there's much better ergonomics, assessing the risks for carers, for the disabled person, and moving and handing equipment starting to come into the house. But nobody had planned for that extra space to use that. And maybe the 1 or 2 carers in that space using it and working with disabled people. So you had all those factors. And also there was a fundamental flaw in the ergonomics and anthropometrics on which housing was based. And that was the assumption that the average wheelchair user self-propelled, that they could propel themselves and transfer independently onto the bed, chair. And the space standards all assumed that was the wheelchair user. But as you and I know, that actually many more people are assisted. They need other people, equipment to move in space. So that was a fundamental flaw. And it was well proven, both through that master's research and other studies. And but it took me from 98 to 2016 to research and prove that in theory, to move it into more studies, to really consolidate that, to move it into policy and get it implemented by the Minister for Communities in 2016. So that's
so
how
that
many
was
years
nearly 20 years.
Yes, to move something from a problem to building new houses on the ground. So that's how long it can take to move right through that cycle.
At that time, where were you employed? At what you moved
I
about
took a
a
year
little
out to
bit.
do the masters, and then I went to lecture in the University of Ulster.
Right.
But
you were still working on the legislation of trying to prove this.
Well, a bit of both. I was sort of researching stuff to teach for the undergraduate course, but then that was up at Jordanstown, and I was teaching community studies. I was teaching sort of design skills in there, reading plans, all that sort of stuff, policy, law, sort of issues in healthcare, social care. And then I was seconded out of the university for 2 years to help the first major fundamental review of adaptations for Northern Ireland, which was inspired by a wonderful leader, Nuala McArdle, who, again, she was the first allied health profession colleague to work at the Department of Health. So she was creating new structures to make representation at the highest level for AHPs, allied health professions. But she in turn then seconded me out to assist her review adaptations. And that again was a first, because it used to be housing looked at housing, health looked at health. This was the first time it was a joint government department review with agencies coming together. So Nuala created that model of interagency working, created the whole infrastructure, and David Bass also, who very sadly has died, very deep, very close colleague and friend. So they created this new model of working, and that has continued since that time.
And that has continued here in Northern Ireland. Is that also the same in other parts of the UK?
It's not. No, I was invited over to speak in Wales at one time to talk through the model. And there was really quite serious interest in Wales adopting exactly the same model, having a key sort of joint worker, a sort of boundary spanner, as they call it, works between the agencies and OT working with the Welsh Government. And they came very close to implementing that, but didn't.
They didn't.
But doesn't exist in Scotland or in England. But although you have a very strong AHP representation in their departments now.
Very good. So tell us about the change in legislation with regard to the Disabled Facilities Grant for kids.
Yeah, well, that was a particular one that I was particularly involved with. An interesting one because I had been deeply involved with the family as a clinician. I built up a very strong relationship.
This is the family we know in Derry, is it?
Yes. And through that, and the father could see that they were experiencing real difficulties with a whole range of public services, education, transportation. And he was aware that his son had a life-limiting illness, and he was aware that time wasn't on his side to try to do as much as he could for his child.
Yeah.
And I was very deeply moved by his struggle, and he realised that he was trying to cope with that on his own.
He felt he was fighting a losing battle nearly.
And then again he became politically aware, and he realised that, if I'm experiencing this, and then he found that so many other families had exactly the same issues and struggles. And one particular one was the Disabled Facilities Grant, where families with disabled children were being means tested to make a contribution towards the cost of their assessed adaptations. But many people genuinely couldn't afford it and were pulling out of the system, but with awful consequences for their children. They were carrying them upstairs, lifting them in out of baths. People were injuring their backs. Sometimes there were slips, falls. Real, genuine problems if they didn't have these adaptations. I was convinced by this, and then I mobilised a bit of research. And so I looked at across Northern Ireland, and in fairness, OT services came together quickly to do a piece of research.
And you asked them to...
I was going to write a journal article for BJOT, and I wanted to say, how big is this problem right across Northern Ireland? So we quantified how many people with genuinely assessed need from the OT services were actually pulling out of the housing grant system because of, or to find out for why were they pulling out. It was primarily finance. There were sometimes other variables like, maybe upheaval, or somebody was too sick to go ahead at a point in time. But the big thing was there was a problem with the way that the grant was been calculated. Didn't allow for the outgoings of the extra cost of disability.
Time off work.
All of that, and very often maybe one parent having to leave the work, to care for the child. So, and then the income dropping over time. So, all of that. And but that was a very valuable paper, and the OT profession came together admirably in very short time scale. So that professional evidence was submitted along with now that the parents were getting organised. So here was your user engagement, user involvement, really mobilising, and throughout Northern Ireland, you could actually feel the service users and the professional people working starting to come into unison with a core objective of changing the system. And then with very good people, very inspired people in housing, people like David Bass, were very sensitive and intelligent people who could see, that I think we need to review the housing side of this. And so there was a review team set up with, again, multi-agency involvement, and they concluded that they should actually abolish means testing for children.
Very good.
And I'd mentioned it before in the book, just today, what it was like. The guy who had led the parental campaign, Brenton McKeever, was invited. He says, "Don't tell Brenton, we're going to break this news," but invite him along to the City Hotel in Derry, and we're going to provide him with a certificate, saying that we're going to abolish means testing. And so it was a complete surprise to him.
Very good.
And and all the players were there, all the stakeholders who had been in this campaign. And what was unique about this, and what made it even more special, was that Northern Ireland very often sort of lagged behind some of the sort of policy developments in the UK. But whenever some of the top researchers like Francis Haywood and Bristol University, who campaigned long and hard for better and fairer housing services for disabled people, others in England, Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who are a wonderful organisation looking at sort of social justice for people who are vulnerable, got involved, and they took this campaign to Wales, and a domino effect occurred. Wales then followed Northern Ireland, and then Westminster followed Wales. And I can remember actually in the Houses of Parliament that day, I think I was actually in the College OT that day, and there was quite a
very good,
exciting day to see this.
So that was a big achievement for you and for Brendan and everybody.
It was collaborative, it really was.
And for Northern Ireland.
For Northern Ireland, it really was.
To be the leader in that.
To actually lead it and create a new model that was followed.
How long did that take from start to finish?
Again, several years. I think 2004 was when the change occurred, and it wasn't as long as the campaign to improve wheelchair housing standards, but it was several years.
So anyway, that is no surprise then that you've been recognised widely, many accolades, And don't be shy now, Paraig. Tell us about all the accolades that you've got and which one meant the most to you, and you deserve them all, just to say that up front. So which ones?
Well, they've all been very special. And actually the thing that, it's not so much the accolade, it's the fact that your colleagues would go to so much bother, because it is hard work to put these things together. And, I think that's what actually sticks with me, that your colleagues would go to that much effort.
So you've got the Fellow of the Royal College.
Yeah,
that was
lovely. I met you there. Do you remember?
That's right.
It was a lovely time in Brighton. Yeah, what a great.
And what do you call him?
James Leckie was
James
there
Leckie got
for
his
me.
honorary
Yeah,
one
which
as
is
well.
It was a gorgeous. It was a lovely, a very happy occasion. And very relaxed. And then I got, which was lovely. I got at a later stage. I got the Inspirational Colleague Award from the Chartered Institute of Housing, and that was lovely because when you go to work in a new setting outside your own professional scope of practice, working a new role, to be recognised by housing colleagues.
People
it was,
outside
it was
your
very
profession.
special. Yeah, I really, really valued that.
And it's important for the profession too that you were recognised.
Absolutely,
it lifted the profession up as well. That you, as the OT, was. Yeah. Moving along, then, we talked earlier about the trauma of the conflict and all, and then sure we had another huge trauma since that was COVID.
Yes.
And I know, like, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that because you have personal reasons, but that was a trauma time for therapists, for people as well, and patients. And
a lot of things have emerged from that. And one of the things that does strike me is if you look at the, actually when I was considering drafting some stuff for the chapter in the book, I looked at the, a comparison between the number of people who lost their lives or who were severely disabled by the Troubles. So you had something like 3,700 people, correct me if I'm wrong, but who actually died. And there was certainly well over 40,000 people have long-term disabilities, and they will require OT services until the day they die.
That's from the conflict.
From the conflict.
Yeah.
And never mind the psychological support services, but still aren't really fully adequate for the scale of need that's there. But if you compare that to COVID, 5,700 people died in 2 years. And they reckon there's probably at least...
In the UK?
No, in Northern Ireland.
In Northern
Ireland. People don't seem to realise this, the scale of loss. And there's up to, they reckon between 20 and 40,000 people have long COVID. And that's probably an underestimate because of the difficulties with diagnosing long COVID. And people are so often coping with tiredness or fatigue and not quite sure what's causing it. But if you look at that, we're trying to overcome the post-traumatic stress of the conflict. We haven't really even seemed to have started at coping with the longer-term effects of the pandemic. It's almost like a collective amnesia. We just want to forget about it.
I think it's over now.
But it's not over. And sadly, it's not over for our family. We were personally experiencing what that's like. And again, for OTs and for other healthcare and medical professionals, again, long COVID's on the spectrum. Some people will have will have COVID and no real problems. Others will get long COVID, but it'll pass maybe in a few months. Others, it could take years. And I have no doubt, and I've seen it, where a percentage of people with long COVID definitely have got a disability.
Yeah.
It's lasted over the year, and it's substantial, which is the DDA definition of a disabling condition. And we need to have focused, specialised services to support people through long COVID. Now, I know there has been a move to create multidisciplinary teams, but again, I fear that that's kind of been wound down a bit over time. I see this as a longer-term requirement to support people. There's also a crying out need for more medical research into better diagnostics and actual better medical treatments.
There's some going on at the minute, but...
You've mentioned that, and I'd be very interested to...
I must just look that up, but it's some sort of an antidote or antibody that they're given. So hopefully that
certainly for the future, my daughter Orla, who also became an OT, is actually a clinical lead for long COVID in Dublin.
Yeah,
and she has combined her OT work with yoga. She's a whole portfolio of complementary medicines.
Yeah,
and she had a very successful group running with the Well Women's Centre in Derry. Yoga for people with long COVID.
Very good.
With free access to this. It was one of the few accessible service. And I started off to sort of meet the needs of local women in Derry, but there was such interest that's now widened out right across the
And she's
island.
clinical lead for
Long COVID.
Ireland.
For Ireland, yeah. at the
And she's an
moment.
OT.
Aye, yeah.
So OT's in your family.
It is, aye.
Because
It started with my Auntie Brenda, who I visited a couple of nights ago,
I know.
who spot the power of OT.
she saw the book.
And she was delighted that the wee reference to her influence in me starting down this career path. In fact, a lot of people are buying this Power of OT book. I'm really I'm amazed at how it's getting around, and
Well,
the
that's good.
feedback's very positive, and people really enjoyed the stories and the very just the sheer diversity of pathways people have gone down. Yeah.
And your Aunt Brenda, what did she work at?
She worked in a variety of settings, but in the latter part, she worked with people with learning disabilities down in County Down.
Oh, right.
And she was a wonderful OT and a lovely, gentle, kind, thoughtful woman. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, just then, we're talking about family. When we talked to you about, when we were doing the book, you talked about your father.
Yes.
And your father was a pharmacist. And
Yes.
and how he he saw as he retired
Yes.
the benefit of
Occupation. And occupational therapy, yeah. Very, anybody who knew my father, he was a very direct talker, a very practical man, no nonsense, no nonsense. But a good pharmacist too, and very good on the medical side, and a lot of empathy for his folks. But yeah, after he retired, I remember him coming to me one day, and he says, do you know what? This occupational therapy is really important. He says, if I don't get a good sweat up every day and get involved with something and get a bit of exercise, it really does so much for my mental health to engage in sort of, particularly vigorous activity.
Yeah.
And get into the garden and dig stuff and grow flowers and grow vegetables and then he was big into his music and he could see and his sports and he could see the value of these activities and raising his morale and meeting people. And he says, occupational therapy is the most important thing in my life at this stage.
That's lovely for you to hear.
Yeah, it
as
was.
the OT in the family.
Yeah, and he was a kind of hard man. Like he didn't say things too lightly.
That's his way of telling you you're doing well. Praising the profession.
Yeah, well,
but it was probably you that he was praising. Yeah. So you were saying there about he was into music and all. Yeah. So that's something you're no stranger to a mic, Paraig. Yeah. Are you?
No,
you're no stranger.
I love music. Yeah, I suppose my mother. She was a primary school music teacher, and she taught all 6 children instrument. Huge patience to do that. And but we all music, yeah, all 6.
Did you play as a family? We
played as a family, but as a family group. And
what was called the O'Brien family?
Yeah. Well, we at St. Louis we formed Ballymena. We formed a traditional group with other local families in Portalone. And we won the All Ireland now, but it went well. A group called Clan Louis.
Clan Louis.
Clan Louis, the clan from
Louis.
The Louis. Yeah.
St. Louis.
And we travelled to Brittany into the inter-Celtic festivals there, where we met other musicians from the other Celtic countries, from Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Brittany. Yeah, that was a great experience, that whole fusion of different musical cultures coming together. And I got a real love of the bagpipes and the drummers, Field Marshal Montgomery, pipe band and that, really built up some very good relationships. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So you play, now do you call it a fiddle or a violin? Tell me the difference between a fiddle and a violin. Is there?
Same thing.
Same thing?
The Irish for fiddle is an idgel. So it's a derivative of the Gaelic for violin.
Violin. So that's what you play?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you play any other instruments?
Not really. I played classical, you see. I sort of dual trained both in classical music and traditional music. And then over time I've become really interested in both Scottish and Irish traditional music, and my other love is sailing, and I think one of the best trips of my life was we were asked to come up and sail from Derry 175 miles up to the ocean to get to the Outer Hebrides. And there was sailors and friends in the Outer Hebrides that arranged a concert tour of all the Scottish islands.
Right.
down with it.
So you love sailing, you love music, and you done
this
the two.
was the idea, a mix of both.
Uh-huh.
And I had great some adventures. Now we had a very bad storm off Barra and force 8 gale, so the perfect storm springs to mind. Yeah, but quite an experience to come through that. But yeah, and the freedom and the of being out in a boat, and yeah. And then they're just meeting the Scottish musicians, and we at workshops, trading tunes, and you know.
I don't know when you get time to do that part with all the work you were doing.
It was very hard to get that time. I mean, but that was a dedicated week, and I was I remember my poor wee children. There's a photograph in the Derry Journal of my 2 children waving goodbye to me on Derry Quay, wanting when to see their dad again. You know,
Sailing out,
yeah,
like the old days.
Yeah, and it was but only a 36-foot boat. It was a wee small sailing
Many
boat.
of you were on the boat.
There was about 5 or 6 of us.
And you sailed the whole way out round there.
Right out to the Hebrides, yeah. It was
and
quite
your fiddle and tow.
with all their instruments, yeah. There was a team of musicians, different instruments, yeah. Flute and Marcus O'Mara, Paraig O'Brien, and yeah. Seamus O'Kane, the great boron maker and player from Dungiven.
Very good.
Great team, yeah.
So, talking about sailing then, first of all, you injured your arm. Was that the first disability? You've had a couple of little, but a couple of
I am the sad
knockbacks.
bearer of people talk about what do you call when something happens 3 times.
Oh, aye.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but your worst injury, probably your elbow.
In my elbow, my first fracture of the head of radius occurred when I was doing research in Oxford. And a physiotherapist who specialised in sports injury, giving the injuries as well as treating them, cleaned me in a football field, and it smashed the elbow. Goodness. And that was a very painful old experience.
And you got the prospect of knowing what it was like to be a patient.
Well, I can remember housing colleagues said, "Paraig, it's kind of ironic, like you ending up with a disability." As if it would confer some sort of immune. Like it's like, because you're a doctor, you're never going to die. You're not going to. I remember sort of laughing at that, thinking, if only, But it certainly, it made me aware of so many things that I wouldn't have. It's one thing when professionally knowing about something.
Yes.
But when you feel the emotion, the frustration, the pain, and I still have pain to this day. So you're constantly going that sort of chronic pain.
Yeah.
The activities that you can't do, and I'm very glad to say that there's a range of things I can't do, but most of the important things I can now do.
You've now achieved.
But also your self-image as well. You're very conscious, of how you look to others, and often you see it worse than it actually is. Other people mightn't even notice it.
No, that's right.
But so I may be sensitive to how other people experience the psychology of disability. Yeah,
well, it's interesting that you to get that perspective, because I just fractured my wrist. It sounds like a simple enough thing, but suddenly you can't drive, you can't look after your kids, you can't you can't dress yourself properly, you
That's
can't
right. Well,
all these things that you just take for granted. And then suddenly you realise what it's like to be, what if this was a permanent disability? And you had to get help or whatever.
There's times you wake up in the morning now and you go to move your limbs, and you can't, it's amazing. Even though I have had this for years, it can still be God, I can't move my arm, I can't move my elbow. Even after all these years.
Yeah. But you put it to good use, because with the sailing, then
absolutely,
you join. Now, when I say join sailability, that's probably not the right term. Tell me about sailability. What is it?
On the go for a long time. They're like you have the Royal Yachting Association, and they have a specialist group or section that encourage disabled people to get out in the water. People with mental health issues, people with physical disabilities. They're a great organisation. There's some wonderful guys locally involved. There's a guy called Gary Crothers. I don't know if you've heard of Gary. Gary has had a motorbike accident.
Yes, I did.
Had
a flail
an
arm.
Amputation of,
yes.
Well, he actually had the arm amputated.
Yeah.
And during COVID, he was over in the Caribbean, and he was waiting for a crew to come out. And of course, with COVID, they couldn't. And he had a very difficult decision. Does he sail literally single-handed right back across the Atlantic to Ireland, or sit out the pandemic? So he actually decided to sail back on his own right across the Atlantic with one arm. And he's such a great guy. He's a real inspiration. His story has inspired so many people. And he's a great guy too. He's a lovely person.
Does he have a book or a podcast, or how
He's
can we
done,
hear more about him?
He's done a series of lectures and talks and that, but he'd be a great guy to get to do a podcast. Martina. He's so inspirational. And then you have Ken Curry as well. He's there. He's a wonderful leader and an inspiration to many. Catherine Curran, the treasurers. There's just a really good network.
And Sailability is about making sailing available to people with disabilities. So you were able to help them with, you know...
the sort of work I would be doing. I would be doing access studies on the facilities and looking at the like one of the practical things, like, you know, whenever you have a gangway going down to the pontoons, what gradient is that? How do you ensure the safety of someone in a wheelchair actually going down? Because when the tide's in, the gradient decreases. When the tide goes out, it vastly increases. There's a 2 metre fall, a huge impact on the safety of getting up and down. So all that sort of practical stuff, you know. But yeah.
Well, we're not going to talk about India because we were earlier, but it just reminds me, I was in India and it was just that we were going out on a wee boat to look. It was called a cruise, but there was no cruise. To look at sunset and sunrise on the Ganges. And we were the first group after the monsoons had receded. And the gangway was just big blocks of wood, and you had a step over them, and they were all sand. And I thought, well, nobody with a disability now was going to get on those boats for sure. It was just when you were talking about the gradient and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a new type of challenge. You know, how do you design out some of the problems in the maritime environment? You know, and it could be on the boats as well. You need specialised equipment to overcome a particular problem. So I enjoy all that.
And are you still involved with that?
Yeah.
I titled your chapter in the book "The Blue Zone" because when we had the last discussion, the last chat, you were saying that you'd watched this programme.
Yes.
And I actually watched it once, just so that I would see.
Isn't it good?
It was very good.
Very inspirational.
Very good. And the Blue Zone, I'm going to get you to talk a little bit more about it, but the bit that I took out of it was they asked this lady what was her secret to a long life. And she said, always have fun, don't get angry, laugh loud and often. That was her secret too.
I like that.
But tell me what the Blue Zone, just for people again listening that might not have seen it.
I certainly recommend people to watch this because it's very uplifting. I suppose they looked right across the planet, right across the world, and to where people were living longest. And they found there was definite patterns and pockets of our communities where people lived into up to 100 and maybe past 100 years of age. And they analysed, why are these people living so long and so well? It wasn't just they were living long, good health. And they found that there were different reasons in different places, but then they looked, there was a core overlap of trends that really seemed to promote long and happy living. And it was things, and I just thought, this is so like occupational therapy. It's the same value system that we have. Sense of purpose, you know, engagement in occupation, you know, that sort of social participation, not living in isolation, and very often activities bringing people together to participate, and also keep you fit and healthy as a byproduct. Then there's all the stuff like the dietary stuff, which would very much... and that was something that my trip to India really brought home to me. I remember being in an aircraft down to Goa, and at the back of the seat it said, don't forget to get a scan, because after all, 1 in 9 people in India have cancer. I thought, well, that's interesting, because there's 1 in 2 over here. I wonder why that is. So I researched that then, and I discovered that the primarily vegetarian diet is one of the big reasons. Far less processed food. You know, they're much quicker to get something from the market, straight from the fields into use. The use of a lot of the spices have anti-cancer properties, the turmerics and other types of spices are anti-cancer properties. And probably less use of alcohol as well. And all those things were leading to a much lower incidence of cancer in India. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And on the Blue Zone, that's what they said, just what you said there. It's not about living longer, it's about living better, or making the most out of your life. I think that's what, you know, it's not just about the years. It's about the quality. The quality of the years as
well.
And
they also mentioned the sort of the spiritual dimension, you know, there's something greater or bigger than yourself, you know, and that. And I think there's increasing evidence that, regardless, not a specific religion, but that believing in a higher force,
higher power
seems to empower or, be good for human beings.
Yeah, very good. I'm nearly finished, but I'm going to give you the chance to, if you have anything you want to impart to our audience. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you my one question is, what would you say to your 20-year-old self now?
I would say do what you did, but I would put a lot more boundaries in a lot of those hours of excess unpaid work that you get roped into or that you engage in voluntarily at the expense of your family.
Mm-hmm.
There's particularly because I was travelling across Northern Ireland, a lot of my, good half of my career was 4 hours a day on top of the day's work, commuting from Derry to Belfast. And I remember pleading with my employers, I could do a lot of this remotely, I could use modern technology, and they didn't get it.
Not then.
Not then, and now when the pandemic came, it's become, it's become custom and practice. And obviously I wouldn't like to be working from home all the time, but that blended mix of using technology to cut down nugatory travel, wear and tear, to spend more quality time with family. I do have regrets about that. But
You still time to make it up.
Well,
I
we
know
are.
there's you.
We are, but as you say, there was just those that early formative days, and there would have been smarter ways of working.
Yeah.
If I'd been able to deploy some of those technologies for a bit more quality family.
So
time.
that would be your message, to spend more time with your family and put your family first.
Yeah.
When I was speaking on the OT show just there in November, that's how I finished the talk, that as OTs we're very good at asking people what's important to you, what do you want to do, and we spend our time, trying to meet those needs. And we don't ask ourselves maybe all the time, what's important to you as a person, because you can't give out what you don't have. So I was trying to get that message out as well, that, look after yourself and your family as well. And say that to all the City Matters people as well. Look after yourself and your family.
No, you got it. Yeah.
So, Paraig, I really think, I told you this before, you need to write a book.
well, thanks for encouraging me, Martina, and actually making that wee contribution towards your own book.
It's a big contribution, and I was very proud that you accepted my invitation.
I wouldn't have done it for myself, but for yourself, encouraged me to write something, which is grand. Yeah.
But would you think about writing a book? Because you have such a lot of stories, and you've done so much.
I want to play music as well, you see.
Oh, I know. You can do everything.
Not at all.
So you can.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Paraig. I enjoyed that conversation.
Oh, so did I, Martina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you.